The Montana Territory didn't forgive mistakes. Elijah Vance had learned that lesson the hard way, watching his first wife and infant daughter disappear beneath white crosses 3 winters back. Fever had taken them both within a week, and he'd buried them when the ground was still soft enough to dig. Now, standing in front of his cabin with that rifle still warm in his hands, he wondered if he'd finally run out of reasons to keep going. The woman, Mara, the letter had said her name was, set down her bag and pulled her shawl tighter against the wind. She looked about 30, maybe younger, hard to tell with the scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone, puckering the skin around her eye. Her dress was clean but patched in 3 places. Her boots had seen better years. "You gonna invite me in, or we doing this out here?" Her voice had a rasp to it, like she'd swallowed smoke. Elijah lowered the rifle. His hands were shaking, though whether from cold or shame, he couldn't say. "You're early. Letter said you wouldn't arrive till Thursday." "Stage driver was eager to get rid of me. Can't imagine why." She picked up her bag. "I'm Mara Rourke. Was supposed to meet a man looking for a wife. Didn't know he'd be halfway to meeting his maker when I got here." He should have felt embarrassed. Should have apologized, explained himself. Instead, he just stood there like a fool, the rifle hanging loose in his grip. Mara walked past him toward the cabin. "This it?" "Yeah." "Seen worse." She pushed the door open without waiting for permission. "Christ, smells like something died in here." Nothing died. Elijah followed her inside, suddenly aware of how the place must look. Dishes piled in the basin, clothes scattered across the floor, the fireplace cold and full of ash. "I've been busy." "Busy?" She set her bag on the table, the only surface not covered in debris. "That what we're calling it?" The cabin was 1 room, maybe 20 feet across. Bed in the corner, stove against the far wall, table, and 2 chairs in the middle. A loft overhead where he'd planned to put children, back when that seemed possible. Now it just held traps and old lumber. Mara walked to the window, rubbed a clear spot in the grime. "How far to the nearest town?" 16 miles. Storm's coming, though. Won't be able to make the trip for at least a week. Convenient." She turned to face him. "So we're stuck here, you and me. That about right?" "I can sleep in the barn." "Don't be stupid. It's 10 below out there." She started unpacking her bag. 2 dresses, a nightgown, a Bible, she set aside without ceremony. "We're both adults. We'll manage." Elijah leaned the rifle against the wall. His head felt thick, like he was watching this happen to someone else. "You didn't ask about the gun." "None of my business. I know what you were gonna do." She pulled out a small cloth bundle, started unwrapping it. Sewing supplies. "I've been there myself. Difference is, I'm too stubborn to follow through." The bluntness of it hit him harder than sympathy would have. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "You came all this way to marry a stranger. You don't even know me." "I know enough." She gathered the dirty dishes, started stacking them. "You're desperate enough to send for a mail-order bride, which means you're either dying, crazy, or can't get a woman the normal way. You live 16 miles from town in the dead of winter, so you're probably not social. And 10 minutes ago you had a gun to your head, so you're haunted by something." She glanced at him. "How am I doing?" "You miss charming." The corner of her mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "I'll add it to the list." She carried the dishes to the basin. "Where's your water?" "Pump's frozen. There's a creek about 100 yards north, but nothing. Show me." She was already pulling her shawl back on. They walked in silence through the snow. The sky had gone purple with dusk, and the wind cut like broken glass. Elijah led her to where the creek ran between 2 stands of pine, the surface iced over except where the current ran fastest. Mara knelt, broke through the ice with the edge of a bucket she'd grabbed from the cabin. The water underneath ran black and quick. She filled 2 buckets, stood without asking for help. "Your turn," she said. He took the axe from his belt, chopped a wider hole. The physical work felt good, real, better than the fog he'd been living in. When they got back to the cabin, Mara had him build up the fire while she heated water for washing. She worked with an efficiency that spoke of practice, no wasted motion. Within an hour, the dishes were clean, the floor swept, the worst of the mess contained. "You got food?" she asked. "Dried venison, some cornmeal, beans. That'll do." She started pulling ingredients together. "When'd you eat last?" Yesterday, maybe the day before. She stopped, looked at him. You're a real mess, aren't you? Trying to be less of one. Well, that's something. She went back to cooking. I'm not much for talking, so don't expect long conversations. I'll keep the house, do the cooking and mending. You handle the rest. We clear? Clear. Good. She stirred the pot hanging over the fire. And Elijah. Yeah? Next time you get the urge to eat a bullet, come find me first. I'll talk you out of it or help you do it right. Either way is better than me riding 16 miles to find out I'm a widow before I'm even a wife. He almost laughed. Would have if the sound hadn't caught in his throat. Deal. They ate in silence. The food was simple, but good. Better than anything he'd managed in months. Mara ate like someone who'd known hunger, steady and focused. When she finished, she washed her bowl and went to her bag. We should probably talk about sleeping arrangements, Elijah said. You take the bed. I'll take the floor by the fire. I'm not sleeping in a dead woman's bed, and you're too tall for the floor. She pulled out a bedroll he hadn't noticed before. Don't argue. I've slept worse places. He wanted to protest, but the exhaustion was catching up with him. 3 days without real sleep, and the crash was coming whether he wanted it or not. Mara spread her bedroll, lay down fully clothed. Blow out the lamp when you're ready. Elijah sat on the edge of the bed. His and Sarah's bed, though the sheets had been changed so many times there was nothing left of her smell. He pulled off his boots, lay back still dressed. Mara? What? Why'd you come? Really? Silence. He thought maybe she wouldn't answer, then, because anywhere's better than where I was. He waited for more, but that was all she gave him. After a while, he heard her breathing even out into sleep. He stared at the ceiling, at the shadows thrown by the dying fire, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the absence of despair. The next morning came hard and bright. Elijah woke to the smell of coffee and frying salt pork. Mara was already up, dressed in the same patched dress, her hair tied back with a strip of cloth. Sleep? She asked, not looking up from the stove. Some. He sat up, rubbed his face. You? Enough. They ate breakfast with the same economy as dinner. When they finished, Mara started clearing the table. I need to check the traps, Elijah said. Won't be back till afternoon. I'll be here. He almost said something else. What, he wasn't sure, but she'd already turned away. So he grabbed his coat, his rifle, and headed out into the cold. The trap line ran 3 miles in a rough circle around the property. He checked each one methodically, reset the empty ones, collected 2 rabbits and a marten. The work was mindless, familiar. It gave him time to think. What the hell was he doing? He'd sent that letter in a moment of weakness, half drunk and desperate for something to change. He'd expected a schoolteacher type, maybe. Someone soft and civilized who'd take one look at this place and demand to go back. Instead, he got Mara, hard as the frozen ground, quiet as falling snow, and apparently immune to being shocked. When he got back to the cabin, she was outside chopping wood. She'd found his spare axe and was working through the pile with steady, practiced strokes. Her form was good, better than good. You'd done this before, he said. She buried the axe in the stump, wiped her forehead. My daddy had me splitting kindling soon as I could lift the axe. Said a woman who couldn't keep herself warm wasn't worth keeping. Sounds like a real sweetheart. He's dead now, so I guess it doesn't matter. She picked up an armload of wood. You get anything? He held up the rabbits. Enough for stew. Good, I'll skin them. She did it efficiently, same as everything else. Elijah watched her work, noticed the way her hands moved, quick, certain, no hesitation. The scar on her face caught the light, and he found himself wondering how she'd gotten it. You gonna ask? Mara said, without looking up. Ask what? About this? She touched her cheekbone. Everyone does eventually? None of my business. That's what I said about your gun, and you told me anyway. She finished with the first rabbit, started on the second. My husband gave it to me. Wedding present, you might say. The casual way she said it made it worse somehow. Elijah felt something cold settle in his gut. Your husband. Former husband. He's why I'm here instead of Illinois. He alive? Last I knew. She tossed the rabbit skin aside. Why? You worried? Should I be? She looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes were gray, he noticed. Light gray, like winter sky. Thomas Rourke's a mean drunk and a meaner sober man, but he's not stupid enough to follow me this far. He's got a new wife by now, probably giving her the same treatment. You run? I left. There's a difference. She carried the cleaned rabbits inside. And before you ask, no, I didn't tell you about him in my letters because men don't generally want used goods with complicated pasts. Elijah followed her in. I'm not most men. No, I don't guess you are. She dumped the rabbits in the pot. You're the kind who'd rather eat a bullet than face another winter alone. That takes a special type of broken. They worked together preparing the stew, Mara directing, Elijah following her lead. It felt strange having another person in the space. Strange, but not bad. The cabin had been quiet so long, even the small sounds of her presence felt loud. The rustle of her skirt, the soft thud of the knife on the cutting board, her breathing. We should talk about the marriage part, Elijah said finally. Mara added salt to the pot. What about it? Whether we're actually going to go through with it. You having second thoughts? No, but you might once you see what you signed up for. She stirred the pot. I saw you with a gun to your head yesterday, and I'm still here. What else you got that's going to scare me off? He almost smiled. Fair point. Besides, she said, I need a husband and you need a wife. Reasons don't matter much beyond that. Don't they? Not to me. She tasted the stew, added more salt. I'm not looking for love, Elijah. I'm looking for a place where I can sleep without wondering if I'll wake up to fists or worse. You can give me that, we'll get along fine. It should have stung, the bluntness of it. Instead, it felt like honesty. Maybe the first honest thing anyone had said to him in years. All right, he said. When the weather clears, we'll ride to town. Get it done proper. Proper? She snorted. Sure. Why not? The storm hit that night, just like Elijah had predicted. Snow came down so thick you couldn't see the barn from the cabin window. The wind howled like something dying, and the temperature dropped until the water in the basin froze solid. They were trapped together. No choice but to make it work. Mara kept busy. She mended his clothes, organized the supplies, made the cabin more livable. Elijah brought in firewood, checked on the livestock, did the repairs he'd been putting off. They moved around each other carefully, learning the rhythms, where she liked to stand when she cooked, how he needed space when he first woke up. Small things, but they mattered. On the third day of the storm, cabin fever started setting in. The walls felt closer, the silence heavier. Tell me about her, Mara said suddenly. Elijah looked up from the trap he was mending. Who? Your wife. The first one. Why? Because she's in this cabin whether we talk about her or not. Might as well bring her out in the open. He set down the trap. Her name was Sarah. We met in Missouri, married young. She wanted to go west, said she was tired of being civilized. His throat felt tight. She was pregnant when we made the crossing, had the baby here, in this cabin. A girl. We named her Emma. Mara waited, didn't push. Scarlet fever came through. Sarah went first. Emma lasted 3 days longer. He stared at his hands. I buried them both by the creek, put up crosses. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. No, Mara agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind screamed. I had a daughter too, Mara said finally. Stillborn. Thomas blamed me, said I'd done something wrong. Maybe I did. I don't know anymore. Elijah looked at her. She was staring at the fire, her face unreadable. After that, he started drinking more, getting rougher. She touched her scar absently. One night he came home drunk, found me packing a bag, said if I tried to leave, he'd kill me. So I waited till he passed out and took my chances. How long ago? 6 months. Longest 6 months of my life. She pulled her shawl tighter. I worked in a hotel in Kansas City for a while, saved every penny. When I saw your advertisement, it felt like a sign. Some sign. Marrying another stranger. Better than the stranger I left. She looked at him. You ever hit Sarah? No. You gonna hit me? No. Then we're already ahead. She stood, stretched. I'm going to bed. You should too. But Elijah sat up a while longer, watching the fire burn down, thinking about second chances and the way desperation could look like fate if you squinted hard enough. The storm broke on the fifth day. They woke to silence, the absence of wind so complete it felt wrong. Elijah went outside, blinking in the brightness. Snow had drifted 6 feet high against the cabin's north wall. The barn was half buried. Jesus, Mara said behind him. Yeah, they spent the day digging out. Hard work, the kind that left your back screaming and your hands numb. But it felt good too, purposeful. By the time the sun started setting, they'd cleared a path to the barn and checked on the animals. 2 more days and we can make the ride to town, Elijah said, leaning on his shovel. Mara nodded. She looked tired, her face flushed from exertion. You sure about this? Getting married, I mean. You barely know me. I know enough. Do you? She pulled off her gloves. I'm not the easiest person, Elijah. I don't trust well. Don't soften easy. You might wake up one day and regret this. Might. He stabbed his shovel into the snow. Or I might not. Either way, it's my choice. She studied him for a long moment. All right then. Your funeral. Hopefully not. This time she definitely smiled. Just barely, just for a second. But it was there. They rode to town 2 days later. The trip took most of the day, the horses struggling through snowdrifts. Mara rode well, he noticed. Sat easy in the saddle like she'd been doing it her whole life. Copper Ridge wasn't much, a main street, a general store, a saloon, and a church that doubled as the schoolhouse. The preacher was a dried-up stick of a man named Watts, who looked at Mara's scar and then pretended he hadn't. You understand this is binding, Watts said, in the eyes of the law and the Lord. We understand, Elijah said. And you, miss? You come here of your own free will? I did. No one's forcing you? Mara's jaw tightened. Nobody forces me to do anything anymore, Reverend. We clear? Watts cleared his throat. Yes? Well, shall we begin? The ceremony took 5 minutes. Elijah had no ring, so they used a piece of rawhide tied around Mara's finger. She didn't complain. When Watts said he could kiss the bride, Elijah hesitated. Mara solved the problem by offering her hand instead. He shook it. Congratulations, Watts said, though he didn't sound convinced. They signed the papers, paid the fee, and walked out into the cold as husband and wife. Well, Mara said, that's done. Yeah. Feel any different? Not really. You? No. She untied her horse. Let's go home. Home. The word hung in the air between them. Neither acknowledged it, but neither took it back either. The ride back was quieter. Darkness fell before they made it halfway, and they had to navigate by moonlight. When they finally saw the cabin, lamplight glowing in the window where Elijah had left it burning, Mara let out a breath. Thought we might freeze to death out here, she said. Still might, night's not over. She laughed, actually laughed. The sound startled them both. Inside, they thawed by the fire. Mara made coffee, strong and bitter. They drank it in silence, exhaustion settling in. I'll take the floor tonight, Elijah said. You should have the bed. Why? We're married now. Still. She rolled her eyes. I'm not made of glass, Elijah. The bed's big enough for 2. We're both adults. We'll manage. It was the same thing she'd said that first night. He realized it was becoming her refrain. They undressed to their underclothes, got into bed on opposite sides. The mattress was old, sagging in the middle. They had to work to stay on their respective edges. This is ridiculous, Mara said after 10 minutes. Yep. We're going to fall into the middle anyway. Probably. So we might as well accept it. She rolled toward the center. After a moment, he did too. They ended up back to back, the warmth between them better than either side alone. Night, Mara said. Night. Elijah lay awake, listening to her breathe, trying to remember the last time he'd shared a bed with another person, trying not to think about what it meant that he felt safer now than he had in 3 years of sleeping alone. Outside, the wind picked up again. But inside, for the first time since Sarah and Emma died, the cabin didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like possibility, and that scared him more than anything. The first week of marriage passed in a rhythm of work and careful distance. They moved around each other like dancers who hadn't quite learned the steps. polite and precise, and always aware of where the other stood. Mara rose before dawn every morning, had coffee ready by the time Elijah came down from checking the loft. He'd nod his thanks, drink it standing by the window, then head out to tend the animals or check the traps. She'd clean, cook, mend. When he came back, they'd eat together in near silence, then retreat to their separate corners of the cabin until darkness forced them back to the bed they still shared like strangers. It was sustainable, livable even. It was also driving them both quietly insane. "You always this talkative?" Mara asked one morning, breaking a silence that had stretched through the entire breakfast. Elijah looked up from his plate. "What?" "Never mind." She collected his empty dish. "Forget I said anything." "No, what'd you mean?" "I mean, you've said maybe 50 words to me in the last 3 days, and half of those were past the salt." She dumped the dishes in the basin harder than necessary. "I'm not asking for poetry, but a little conversation wouldn't kill you." He set down his coffee. "Didn't think you wanted conversation. You said you weren't much for talking." "I also said I wasn't made of glass, but you still act like I'll shatter if you look at me wrong." She turned to face him. "We're married, Elijah. We live in a one-room cabin in the middle of nowhere. We're going to have to actually speak to each other eventually. I'm speaking to you now. Because I forced you to." She crossed her arms. "What are you so afraid of?" The question hit harder than she probably intended. Elijah stood, grabbed his coat. "I've got work to do." "Of course you do." Her voice followed him to the door. "Run away. That's easier." He stopped, hand on the latch, turned back. "What do you want from me?" "I don't know." She looked tired suddenly. "Something, anything, just not this." They stared at each other across the cabin. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. "I'm not good at this," Elijah said finally. "The talking, being around people. I've been alone too long." "You think I'm good at it?" Mara laughed, bitter. "I spent 5 years married to a man who only talked with his fists. Before that, I had a father who thought children should be seen and never heard. I don't know how to do this any more than you do." "So what do we do?" "I don't know." She turned back to the dishes. "But we better figure it out before we kill each other." He left then, because he didn't know what else to do. Spent the morning in the barn, fixing things that didn't need fixing, trying not to think about the look on her face when she'd asked what he was afraid of. Everything, he could have said. "I'm afraid of caring again. Afraid of losing again. Afraid that if I let you in, even a little, the whole damn thing will collapse, and I'll end up back where I started, with a gun to my head and no good reason not to pull the trigger." But saying that out loud would have required the kind of honesty he'd buried with Sarah and Emma, and he wasn't sure he could dig that deep anymore. When he came back for lunch, Mara had bread and cheese laid out. She didn't look at him when he sat down. "I'm sorry," he said. She cut the bread with deliberate care. "For what?" "For making this harder than it needs to be." "We're both making it hard." She handed him a piece of bread. "I shouldn't have pushed." "Maybe I needed pushing." She almost smiled. "Well, I'm good at that at least." They ate in a silence that felt different than before. Less hostile. More like a truce. "Tell me something about yourself," Elijah said. "Something that doesn't hurt to talk about." Mara considered this while she chewed. "I like horses. Always have. My mama used to take me riding when I was little, before she died. It's the only good memory I have of being a kid." "You ride well, I noticed. Daddy made sure of that. Said a woman who couldn't handle a horse was useless." She took another bite. "Of course, he said that about most things. Cooking, sewing, shooting." "You shoot?" "Better than you, probably." He raised an eyebrow. "That's so. Want to find out?" They spent the afternoon setting up targets behind the barn, taking turns with Elijah's rifle. Mara hadn't been lying. She could shoot. Hit 4 out of 5 cans at 50 yards, and the 5th was close enough to count. "Where'd you learn that?" Elijah asked, genuinely impressed. "Daddy again. He had 3 daughters, no sons. Figured he better make us useful somehow." She reloaded with practiced ease. "My sisters married young, got out. I was the stubborn one, stayed too long." "Why?" "Because I was stupid enough to think Thomas Rourke was different." She aimed, fired, hit dead center. Turned out Mean runs in different packages, but it's all the same inside. Elijah took the rifle, sighted down the barrel. "I'm not him." "I know that." Do you? She looked at him then, really looked. Yeah, I do. You're broken in different ways, but you're not mean. That's why I stayed that first day, even after seeing you with the gun. Mean men don't point weapons at themselves. They point them at everyone else. He fired, missed, swore under his breath. You're pulling left, Mara said, anticipating the recoil. I know what I'm doing. Could have fooled me. She took the rifle back. Watch. She demonstrated, slow and deliberate. He watched the way she breathed, the way she settled her weight. The scar on her face caught the afternoon light, and he wondered again about the man who'd given it to her. You ever think about going back? He asked. To Illinois? Never. The word came quick and hard. I'd rather freeze to death out here than spend one more day in that house. That bad? Worse. She handed him the rifle. Your turn, and don't pull left this time. He hit the target, not center, but close enough. Better, Mara said. They kept shooting until the light started failing. When they headed back to the cabin, Elijah felt something ease in his chest. Like maybe this could work after all. Like maybe they could figure out how to be two broken people living under one roof without destroying each other in the process. Dinner that night was easier. They talked about small things, the weather, the traps, whether they had enough supplies to last till spring. It wasn't deep, but it was something. A start. When they went to bed, Mara didn't immediately turn away. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Do you still love her, Sarah? The question should have hurt. Instead, it just felt tired. I don't know anymore. I loved who she was. But she's been gone so long, sometimes I can't remember what that felt like. Does that make you feel guilty? Every damn day, Mara nodded. I don't love Thomas. Never really did. But I feel guilty anyway. Like maybe if I'd been different, better, he wouldn't have turned mean. That's not how it works, isn't it? No. He turned to look at her. Mean people are mean because of what's inside them, not because of what someone else did or didn't do. You sound pretty sure about that. I am. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you ever get lonely, even when Sarah was alive? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? I mean, did you ever feel alone even when you weren't? Like there was something missing you couldn't name? He thought about it. About the quiet moments when Sarah had been sewing and he'd been reading and the cabin had felt full, but somehow empty at the same time. About the way he'd sometimes look at her and feel like he was looking at a stranger. Yeah, he said. Sometimes. Me too. She pulled the blanket higher. With Thomas, every day. But even before that. Even when I was a kid surrounded by family, like I was waiting for something that never came. You still waiting? I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired of waiting. Maybe this is it, just trying to survive and not expecting anything more. That's a sad way to live. It's a realistic way to live. She turned onto her side, facing away from him. Good night, Elijah. Night. He lay awake long after her breathing evened out, thinking about loneliness and low expectations, and whether two people could build something real on a foundation of shared damage. The next morning brought fresh snow and a broken wagon wheel that needed replacing. Elijah spent hours in the cold, working the wood, trying to get the angle right. His hands were numb and his back ached, and he was ready to throw the whole damn thing in the creek when Mara appeared with hot coffee. You're doing it wrong, she said. I'm doing it fine. The spoke's too thick. It won't fit. He looked at the spoke, then at the wheel. She was right. He'd measured wrong. Damn it! He threw down the chisel. Here. She set down the coffee, picked up the chisel. Let me. I can do it. I know you can, but I can do it faster. She started shaving down the wood with quick, confident strokes. My daddy built wagons before he took to farming. Made me and my sisters help. Said we needed to know how things worked. Elijah watched her work. After a minute, he picked up his coffee, admitted defeat. Your daddy teach you everything? He asked. Near enough, except how to be happy. Never got the hang of that one. She checked the fit, shaved a bit more. There. Try it now. The spoke slid in perfectly. Elijah secured it, tested the wheel. Solid. Thanks, he said. Welcome. She wiped her hands on her apron. I made stew. It'll be ready in an hour. She started back toward the cabin, but he called after her. Mara? She turned. I'm glad you're here. She looked surprised. Then something softened in her face. Yeah, me too. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. The days began to blur together after that, each one a little easier than the last. They developed routines, learned each other's habits. Mara discovered that Elijah couldn't function in the morning without coffee, so she always had it ready. Elijah learned that Mara hated washing dishes but didn't mind chopping wood, so he took over the cleaning and let her handle the woodpile. Small accommodations, but they added up. They talked more. Not about deep things, not yet, but about the everyday mechanics of survival. How to tell when a trap needed replacing. The best way to cure venison, whether the roof would last another winter, or if they'd need to patch it come spring. And slowly, carefully, they began to let their guards down. I lied to you, Mara said one night as they were getting ready for bed. Elijah looked up from pulling off his boots. About what? When I said I wasn't looking for love. She sat on her side of the bed. I mean, I wasn't, but I guess I was hoping for something. Friendship, maybe. Partnership. I don't know. That doesn't sound like a lie. Feels like one, because I made it sound like I didn't need anything from you except a roof and safety, but that's not true. I need more than that. She looked at him. I need to know this is real, that we're building something, even if it's small. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. I'm scared, she continued, that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake, that I'm not enough to keep you from going back to that dark place. Mara, let me finish. She twisted the rawhide ring on her finger. I'm not good at needing people, never have been. But I need you, Elijah. Not just for survival, for the other stuff. The talking, the not being alone, and that scares me more than anything Thomas ever did. The vulnerability in her voice cracked something open in his chest. He crossed to her side of the bed, sat down next to her. I'm scared too, he admitted, that I'll let you down, that I don't have anything left to give, that one day the darkness will come back and I won't be able to fight it. So what do? We keep trying. He took her hand. That's all we can do. She looked down at their joined hands. Hers were rough, calloused from work. His were the same. Two broken people holding on to each other because it was better than holding on to nothing. Okay, she said quietly. We keep trying. That night, for the first time, they fell asleep facing each other instead of back to back. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Winter deepened. The snow piled higher, the temperatures dropped lower, and the world outside the cabin became hostile and white and endless. But inside, something was changing. They started touching more. Nothing intimate, just casual contact. A hand on a shoulder when passing, fingers brushing when handing over a plate. The kind of small intimacies that married people took for granted, but that felt monumental to two people learning how to trust again. Mara started humming while she worked. Old songs Elijah didn't recognize, probably from her childhood. He found he liked the sound. It made the cabin feel lived in. Elijah started smiling more. Not often, and never for long, but enough that Mara noticed. You should do that more often, she said one morning. Do what? Smile. Makes you look almost human. Almost? Don't push it. But she was smiling too. They had their first real fight 3 weeks into February. It started over something stupid, Elijah tracking mud across Mara's freshly swept floor, and escalated into something bigger. You think I like cleaning? Mara snapped. You think I enjoy spending half my day making this place livable just so you can walk through and mess it up again? It's mud, Mara. It'll dry. That's not the point. Then what is the point? The point is you don't see what I do. You don't notice. She threw down the broom. I cook, I clean, I mend your clothes, I keep this place running, and you act like it all just happens by magic. I never said, you don't have to say it. I can see it. Her eyes were bright with anger. I'm not your servant, Elijah. I'm your wife. There's a difference. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just wanted someone to do the work Sarah used to do. That hit like a slap. That's not fair. Isn't it? She grabbed her shawl. I need air. She stormed out into the cold. Elijah stood in the cabin, staring at the muddy footprints, feeling like the world's biggest fool. She was right. He'd been taking her for granted, falling into old patterns, expecting her to handle the domestic work while he handled everything else. It hadn't been conscious, but that didn't make it better. He cleaned up the mud, swept the whole floor, not just where he'd tracked. Then he went outside to find her. She was sitting on the woodpile, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. Her face was red, from wind or crying. He couldn't tell. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what specifically? For being an ass? For not seeing what you do? For acting like your work doesn't matter as much as mine?" She looked at him. "You mean that?" "Yeah, I do." He sat down next to her. "I got used to being alone, to only thinking about what I needed to do. It's hard to change that." "I know, but you have to try." "I am trying." "Try harder." She leaned against him slightly. "I'm not asking for much, Elijah. Just to be seen. To matter. You matter." "Then act like it." They sat there until the cold became unbearable, then went back inside. The fight wasn't resolved, not really, but something had shifted. They'd fought and survived it. That was something. After that, Elijah made more of an effort. He thanked her for meals, noticed when she'd reorganized the supplies or mended his favorite shirt. Small acknowledgments, but they meant something. Mara, in turn, started trusting him with more of herself. She told him about her sisters, Margaret, who'd married a banker and moved to St. Louis, and Caroline, who died in childbirth at 19. She talked about her mother, who'd been gentle and sad and had died when Mara was 12, leaving her alone with a father who didn't know what to do with daughters. "I think that's when I learned to be hard," Mara said one night, "when Mama died. Because being soft just hurt too much." "You're not as hard as you think," Elijah said. "Yes, I am." "No, you're careful. There's a difference." She thought about that. Maybe. He told her things too, about growing up in Ohio, the third son of a farmer who'd had too many mouths to feed, about heading west as soon as he was old enough, looking for something he couldn't name, about meeting Sarah at a dance in Kansas City and thinking she was the prettiest thing he'd ever seen. "Did you love her right away?" Mara asked. "I thought I did. Now I'm not sure I knew what love was back then. I was 22. Everything felt like forever. And now? Now I know better." He stared at the fire. "Forever doesn't exist. There's just today, and maybe tomorrow if you're lucky." "That's bleak." "That's realistic." She smiled sadly. "We're a pair, aren't we? Neither of us can see past the next crisis. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe that's just surviving. Maybe." She stood, stretched. "I'm tired. You coming to bed?" "In a minute." She paused at the bed, looked back at him. "Elijah." "Yeah? I'm glad we had that fight." "Why?" "Because now I know we can, and we'll be okay anyway." After she'd fallen asleep, Elijah sat by the fire thinking about what she'd said, about fighting and surviving and being okay anyway, about how maybe that was all marriage really was, two people choosing each other over and over, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He went to bed and lay beside her, listening to her breathe. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, but inside he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. March came in cold and mean, bringing a late storm that buried the cabin for 3 days straight. They were trapped inside together with nothing to do but wait it out. The kind of forced proximity that either broke people or brought them closer. For Elijah and Mara, it turned out to be the latter. They talked, really talked, the way they hadn't before, about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their regrets, their fears for the future, the things they missed about civilization, the things they didn't. "I miss theater," Mara said. "There was a playhouse in Kansas City. I went once before I met Thomas. It was magical." "I miss books," Elijah said. "Real books, not just the Bible and a farmer's almanac. I used to read everything I could get my hands on." "What kind of books?" "Adventure stories mostly. Tales about people doing impossible things in impossible places." He smiled slightly. "Seem more appealing than farming. And now you're living an adventure, sort of." If you call freezing your ass off in Montana an adventure, sure. She laughed. It was getting easier to make her laugh. They played cards with a worn deck Mara had brought with her. She taught him a game she'd learned from her sisters, something complicated involving bidding and trumps. He was terrible at it, but he liked watching her face when she won, the way her eyes lit up with competitive pride. "You're letting me win," she accused. "I'm not. I'm just bad at this." "Nobody's this bad." "I am." She studied him across the table. "You really are, aren't you?" "I really am." "Well," she gathered the cards, "I guess I'll have to teach you properly." They played until the lamp oil ran low, then went to bed still arguing about whether he'd miscounted the trumps or she'd cheated. On the second day of being snowed in, cabin fever hit hard. They were snippy with each other, getting on each other's nerves over tiny things. The way Elijah cleared his throat, the way Mara tapped her fingers on the table, the close quarters amplifying every small irritation. "Stop that," Mara said. "Stop what?" "That thing with your jaw, the grinding." "I'm not grinding." "You are. You've been doing it for an hour." "Well, you've been tapping your fingers like a damn woodpecker." She stopped tapping, glared at him. "This is ridiculous." "Agreed. We're acting like children." "Also agreed." They stared at each other. Then simultaneously, they both started laughing. It was absurd, fighting over jaw grinding and finger tapping while a blizzard raged outside. The laughter broke the tension, left them gasping and grinning like fools. "We're going to kill each other before spring," Mara said. "Probably." "Well, at least it'll be memorable." That night, they lay in bed listening to the wind howl. "Elijah," Mara said into the darkness. "Yeah? I'm glad it's you. That I ended up here. With you." His throat felt tight. "Yeah. Me too." She reached for his hand under the blankets. He took it, held on. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even particularly romantic, but it was real and honest, and it mattered more than any pretty words could have. By the time the storm cleared, something fundamental had shifted between them. They'd crossed some invisible line from strangers who happened to be married to something more. Partners, maybe. Friends. People who were choosing each other not out of desperation, but out of something that felt almost like want. The first day of clear weather, they went outside together. The world was white and pristine and brutally beautiful. Mara tilted her face up to the sun, closed her eyes. "I miss this," she said. "The cold? The sky. Being able to see more than four walls." Elijah watched her. The scar on her face was stark in the bright light, but it didn't make her less beautiful. If anything, it made her more real. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About?" "About how I almost didn't send that letter." She opened her eyes. "What changed your mind?" "I don't know. Desperation, maybe, or just being too stubborn to die. Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it." They stood there in the snow, two people who'd found each other at the edge of the world, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Elijah felt something that might have been happiness. It scared him, but not enough to make him let it go. April brought the first signs of thaw. The creek started running again, the snow began to recede, and the world turned from white to brown to the first tentative green. With the change in season came change in their relationship too. They'd settled into each other now, comfortable in a way that would have seemed impossible 3 months ago. They worked together seamlessly, Mara planting the kitchen garden while Elijah repaired the barn, both of them falling into an easy rhythm of shared labor and shared space. They touched more freely now, his hand on her waist when he passed behind her, her fingers on his shoulder when she leaned over to point something out. Nothing sexual, not yet, but intimate in its casualness. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Mara leaned her head against his shoulder. "This is nice," she said. "Yeah. Think it'll last?" "What?" "This. Us. The peace." He wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her forever, but he'd learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I want it to." "That's enough." She reached for his hand. "For now, that's enough." The sunset painted the sky red and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried. The air smelled like earth and snowmelt and possibility. Elijah pulled her closer. She let him. And for the first time since Sarah and Emma died, he let himself imagine a future that didn't end with a gun in a frozen grave. It felt dangerous. It felt fragile. It felt like hope. That hope lasted exactly 3 weeks. Elijah was in town when it happened, trading furs for supplies they'd need to get through the next season. The trip should have taken most of the day, 16 miles there, conduct business, 16 miles back. He'd left at dawn with Mara standing in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, telling him to be careful on the muddy roads. "I'll be back before dark," he'd promised. "You better be. I'm making that venison stew you like." He'd kissed her forehead, something he'd started doing in the last few weeks, casual and easy, like they'd been doing it for years instead of months. She'd smiled, that small, private smile she saved just for him, and he'd ridden off feeling like maybe the worst was behind them. He should have known better. Mara spent the morning working in the garden, coaxing the early vegetables along, enjoying the warmth of the sun on her back. The world felt almost gentle, which should have been her first warning. Nothing in her life had ever stayed gentle for long. She was pulling weeds when she heard the horse. At first she thought Elijah had forgotten something, turned back. But the sound was wrong. Too heavy, too deliberate. She stood slowly, wiping dirt from her hands, squinting toward the tree line. The rider emerged from the shadows like something out of a nightmare. Thomas Rourke looked exactly the same. Maybe a little thicker around the middle, maybe a few more lines around his eyes, but the same cruel mouth, the same cold stare. He sat his horse like a man who'd never doubted his right to take up space in the world. Mara's blood turned to ice. "Well, well," Thomas said, reining in about 20 feet away. "Took me a while to find you, Mara, but I always was persistent." She didn't move. Couldn't. Her feet felt rooted to the ground, her lungs too tight to draw breath. This wasn't possible. He couldn't be here. She'd been so careful, covered her tracks so well. "Nothing to say?" Thomas dismounted, started walking toward her. "That's not like you. You always had plenty to say when you walked out on me." "How did you find me?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Lucky guess, mostly. Heard about a woman matching your description getting married to some homesteader up in Montana. Figured it was worth checking out." He stopped a few feet away, looked around. "Nice place. Better than what we had." "What do you want, Thomas?" "What do you think I want? You're my wife." "I stopped being your wife the night I left." His face darkened. "That's not how marriage works, Mara. Till death do us part, remember? We made vows. You broke those vows every time you raised your hand to me." "I disciplined you. There's a difference." He took another step closer. "And you needed it. Running off like some common whore, shacking up with the first man who'd have you. I married him, legal and proper. You can't marry someone else when you're already married to me." His hand moved to his belt, where a pistol hung in a worn holster. "That makes you an adulteress, makes him a thief." Mara's mind raced. Elijah wouldn't be back for hours. She was alone with a man who'd beaten her for looking at him wrong, who'd promised to kill her if she ever tried to leave. A man who'd tracked her across half the country to make good on that promise. "Thomas, listen. No, you listen." He grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You're coming back with me. We're going home, and you're going to be the wife you should have been from the start." "I'm not going anywhere with you." He hit her, backhanded, casual, like he was swatting a fly. The blow sent her stumbling, her hand coming up to her cheek, stars exploding behind her eyes. "Still got that mouth on you," Thomas said. "Guess some things never change." Mara tasted blood. The familiar copper tang brought back every memory she'd tried to bury. Every beating, every threat, every morning she'd woken up wondering if today was the day he'd finally kill her. But something was different now. She'd spent 6 months free. 6 months learning she could survive on her own, that she was stronger than she'd believed. 6 months with a man who'd never once raised his hand to her, who looked at her like she mattered. She wasn't the same woman who'd run from Illinois. "No," she said. "What?" "I said no." She straightened up, met his eyes. "I'm not going with you. This is my home now. Elijah is my husband. You need to leave." Thomas laughed, ugly and mean. "Your husband? That pathetic widower playing house with another man's wife? He doesn't own you, Mara. I do." "Nobody owns me." "We'll see about that. He reached for her again, but this time she was ready. She twisted away, stumbled back toward the cabin. If she could get inside, get to Elijah's rifle. Thomas caught her before she made it 3 steps. His hand, fisted in her hair, yanked her back hard enough to make her cry out. He dragged her toward his horse, ignoring her struggles. "Thought you could just disappear?" he snarled in her ear. "Thought I'd let you make a fool of me? Everyone back home knows you ran. Do you have any idea what that did to my reputation? Let go of me!" Not a chance. He threw her against the side of the cabin. Her shoulder hit hard, pain shooting down her arm. "You're going to get on that horse, and we're going to ride out of here. And if your so-called husband tries to stop us, I'll put a bullet in him." Mara's vision swam. Her shoulder throbbed. But underneath the pain and fear, something else was building. Rage. Pure, clean, burning rage. She'd spent 5 years cowering, 5 years making herself small, trying not to provoke him, believing somehow it was her fault. She'd run instead of fighting because she'd been too broken to imagine another option. But she wasn't broken anymore. When Thomas reached for her again, she grabbed a piece of firewood from the stack by the door and swung it with everything she had. It connected with his temple with a satisfying crack. He staggered back, blood streaming down the side of his face. "You bitch!" She swung again. Missed this time. Thomas recovered faster than she'd expected, lunged at her. They went down in a tangle of limbs, Mara fighting like something feral, all teeth and nails in desperation. He was stronger. He'd always been stronger. But she was fighting for her life now, for her freedom, for the future she'd just started to believe in. She got her knee up, drove it into his stomach. He grunted, loosened his grip enough for her to scramble away. She made it to the cabin door this time, got inside, slammed it shut, threw the bolt. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely grip the rifle. She checked the load with fumbling fingers, still loaded from the last time Elijah had used it. Thomas pounded on the door. "Open up, Mara! Don't make this worse! Go away!" She backed toward the window, rifle raised. "I'll shoot you, Thomas. I swear I will." "No, you won't. You never had the guts for that." He was right. The old Mara wouldn't have. The old Mara would have opened the door, would have gone with him, would have accepted whatever punishment he deemed appropriate because she'd been taught that was what wives did. But the old Mara was dead. This Mara had learned to shoot, to work, to survive. This Mara had a husband who treated her like an equal, who trusted her, who made her feel like she could do impossible things. This Mara was done being afraid. She raised the rifle, aimed it at the door. "I'm counting to 10. If you're not gone by then, I'm pulling this trigger." Thomas laughed. "You're bluffing. 1, 2, 3. Mara, 4, 5, 6. The pounding stopped. She heard him breathing hard on the other side of the door, considering his options. "This isn't over," he said finally. "I'm not leaving Montana without you. That husband of yours comes back. We're going to have a conversation, man to man. 7, 8. You hear me, Mara? One way or another, you're coming home with me. 9. Silence. Then footsteps. The sound of a horse being mounted. Hoofbeats fading into the distance. Mara held her position for another full minute, rifle trained on the door, heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. When she was sure he was really gone, she lowered the weapon with shaking hands and slid down the wall to sit on the floor. She'd won. For now. But Thomas's words echoed in her head. This isn't over. He'd be back, and next time Elijah would be here. The thought of what Thomas might do, what he was capable of, made her stomach turn. She'd seen him angry before, seen what he did to men who crossed him. Elijah was tough, a survivor, but Thomas fought dirty, always had. She sat there on the floor, rifle across her knees, and tried to figure out what to do. She could run, pack her things, take one of the horses, disappear before Elijah got back. It would be safer that way. Thomas would follow her, leave Elijah alone. It was the smart choice, the selfless choice. But the thought of leaving made her chest ache. This cabin, this life, this man who'd given her a reason to stop running, she wasn't ready to give that up. Wasn't sure she could, even to keep Elijah safe. She was still sitting there, frozen with indecision, when she heard hoofbeats again. Her blood went cold. He'd come back. Of course he had. Thomas never gave up that easy. She scrambled to her feet, raised the rifle, positioned herself by the window where she could see the approach. But it wasn't Thomas. It was Elijah, riding hard, his face tight with concern. He must have seen the disturbed ground, the signs of a struggle. Mara threw open the door and ran out to meet him. He dismounted before the horse had fully stopped, caught her as she crashed into him. What happened? His hands ran over her, checking for injuries. Mara, talk to me. What happened? Thomas. The word came out choked. He found me. Elijah went still. Your husband? My former husband. He was here. He tried to take me. Where is he now? Gone. I chased him off with the rifle. She pulled back to look at him. But he's coming back, Elijah. He said as much. He's not going to just give up. Elijah's jaw tightened. She could see him processing, calculating. Did he hurt you? Not much. A slap, some bruises. She touched her cheek, which was already starting to swell. Nothing I haven't survived before. His eyes darkened when he saw the mark. I'll kill him. No. She grabbed his arms. That's what he wants. An excuse to shoot you and claim self-defense. He's smart, Elijah. Mean and smart. We have to be smarter. So what do we do? That was the question she'd been wrestling with. What could they do? Thomas had the law on his side technically. She'd never gotten a legal divorce. In the eyes of most people, she was still his wife. Her marriage to Elijah could be considered invalid, but she'd be damned if she let legal technicalities decide her fate. We stand our ground, she said, together. He can't take me if we don't let him. He could try, then we fight back. She met his eyes. I'm not running anymore, Elijah. I'm tired of running. This is my home. You're my husband. If Thomas wants to change that, he's going to have to kill me first. Don't talk like that. I'm serious. I'd rather die here than go back to that life. She touched his face. But I need to know you're with me. That you're not going to decide this is too much trouble and send me away to keep the peace. Send you away? He looked genuinely shocked. Mara, no. Never. You're my wife. That man has no claim on you, legal or otherwise. He thinks he does. I don't care what he thinks. Elijah pulled her close, held her tight. We'll figure this out. Together. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they could face this and win. But she'd lived too long with Thomas's brand of cruelty to underestimate him. They went inside together. Elijah checked the rifle, made sure all the weapons were loaded and within easy reach. He barred the door, checked the windows, moving with purpose, with focus. Tell me everything, he said. What he said, what he did, all of it. So she did. Every detail she could remember, from the moment Thomas rode out of the trees to the moment he'd ridden away. Elijah listened without interrupting, his expression getting harder with each word. He'll wait until dark, Elijah said when she finished. Come back when he thinks we're asleep. That's what I do. Maybe. Or maybe he'll wait for you to leave again, catch me alone. I'm not leaving you alone, not until this is settled. That could be days, weeks, even. Then that's how long it takes. He pulled ammunition from the shelf, started loading additional rounds. I'm not letting him take you, Mara. Whatever it takes. She watched him prepare, this man who'd been ready to end his own life just a few months ago, now ready to fight for hers. The transformation was almost absurd, almost beautiful. Why? She asked quietly. He looked up. Why what? Why are you willing to risk this? Thomas could kill you, could burn this place to the ground. You could walk away right now. Tell me to go with him. Save yourself the trouble. That's what you think I'd do? I don't know. I need to understand. Elijah set down the ammunition, crossed to where she stood. He took her hands in his, calloused palms rough against hers. You remember that first day, he said, when you found me with the gun? Hard to forget. You didn't run, didn't scream, just asked if I was Elijah Vance and acted like finding a man about to blow his brains out was the most normal thing in the world. He smiled slightly. That's when I knew you were different, that you'd seen darkness too, that you understood. So you saved my life that day. Maybe not in the obvious way, but you did. You gave me a reason to put down that gun, a reason to keep going. His grip tightened. I'm not letting some bastard who beat you and terrorized you take that away. Not from you, and not from me." Her eyes burned. "Elijah, I love you." The words came out rough, unpracticed, like he was speaking a foreign language. "I know we said this wasn't about love, that it was just survival. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. At least for me." She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just stared at him with tears streaming down her face. "You don't have to say it back," he continued. "I'm not asking for that. I'm just telling you why I'm fighting, why I'll keep fighting, as long as it takes." "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have for a while. I was just too scared to admit it." He kissed her then. Really kissed her, for the first time since they'd been married. It was clumsy and desperate and perfect, tasting of fear and hope, and something that felt like a promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara rested her forehead against his. "We're going to survive this," she said. "Damn right we are." They spent the rest of the day fortifying the cabin, moved furniture against the windows, checked every possible entry point, made sure they had clear lines of sight in all directions. It felt like preparing for a siege, which maybe it was. As the sun started to set, Elijah made coffee, and they sat together by the window, watching the tree line. "Tell me about him," Elijah said. "Thomas? What should I expect?" Mara wrapped her hands around her cup, gathering her thoughts. "He's cruel, but he's not stupid. He won't come at us straight on if he can help it. He'll look for an advantage, wait for a moment when we're vulnerable." "What about the law? Could he get the sheriff involved?" "Maybe. Depends on whether the sheriff cares about the details. Some men hear runaway wife and automatically side with the husband." She took a sip of coffee. "But we're a long way from Illinois. Might be he can't prove we were married. Might be the sheriff tells him to handle his own business. And if he does try to involve the law, then we have to prove you and I are legally married, which we are. We've got the papers from Reverend Watts. That should count for something." "Should." Elijah didn't sound convinced. They fell into silence, watching darkness creep across the land. Every shadow became suspicious. Every sound put them on edge. Around midnight, Mara dozed off, sitting up, the rifle across her lap. Elijah let her sleep, keeping watch alone. His eyes burned from staring into the darkness, but he didn't dare close them. Thomas didn't come that night, or the next, or the one after that. The waiting was almost worse than the confrontation would have been. Every day stretched tight with tension, every noise a potential threat. They couldn't work the trap lines, couldn't go to town, couldn't do anything that required leaving the cabin undefended. On the fourth day, Mara was ready to scream from the confinement. "This is exactly what he wants," she said, pacing the cabin like a caged animal. "To trap us here, make us paranoid and scared. Better paranoid than dead." "Is it? What kind of life is this, jumping at every sound, never sleeping properly, always waiting for something terrible to happen?" Elijah didn't have an answer for that. That night, as they lay in bed, neither of them sleeping, just pretending, Mara turned to face him. "What if we left?" she said. "Just packed up and moved somewhere else. Started over. You said you weren't running anymore." "I'm not. I'm being practical. If we're not here, Thomas can't hurt us." "You really think he'd let it go? That he wouldn't just follow us again?" Elijah shook his head. "Men like that don't give up. They can't. It's not about you anymore. It's about pride, about winning. So what do? We end it, one way or another." The finality in his voice sent a chill through her. "What does that mean?" "It means when he comes back, and he will come back, we make sure he understands there's no negotiation. No possibility of you leaving with him. We make it clear he needs to go back to Illinois and forget you exist." "And if he doesn't agree?" Elijah's silence was answer enough. Mara understood what he wasn't saying, that this could end in blood, that one of these men, maybe both, might not survive the confrontation. The thought terrified her, but she also knew it was true. Thomas wouldn't leave peacefully. He'd have to be forced out one way or another. "I don't want you to kill him," she said quietly. "I don't want to either. But you will if you have to." "Yes." She took his hand in the darkness. "What does that make us? What kind of people does that make us?" "Survivors." He squeezed her hand. "Same as we've always been." Morning came cold and gray. They were eating a silent breakfast when they heard the horse. This time there was no mistaking who it was. Thomas rode up to the cabin like he owned the place, dismounted with deliberate casualness. But Mara could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed close to his gun. Elijah stepped outside first, rifle in hand but not raised. Mara followed, positioning herself slightly behind him but where she could see clearly. "You must be the husband," Thomas said. "Elijah, is it?" "Elijah Vance, and you're trespassing." "Am I? Funny, I thought I was collecting my wife." "She's not your wife. She's mine." Thomas smiled, ugly and cold. "See, that's where we disagree. Mara and I were married proper, in a church, with witnesses. You and her? That's just play acting, adultery dressed up in legal papers. I've got papers that say otherwise. Papers from some frontier preacher who probably can't even read? Those don't mean a damn thing back in Illinois." Thomas shifted his weight. "I'm not here to cause trouble, friend. I just want what's mine." "I'm not yours," Mara said, stepping forward. "Not anymore." Thomas's eyes fixed on her. "You don't get to decide that. Marriage is a covenant. You don't just walk away because things get hard." "You beat me, terrorized me, nearly killed me." Her voice was steady now, clear. "That broke any covenant we had." "I disciplined you when you needed it. That's a husband's right." "The hell it is." Elijah raised the rifle slightly. "She's told you no. I'm telling you no. Time for you to ride out." Thomas's hand moved closer to his gun. "Or what? You'll shoot me? That'd make you a murderer." "Self-defense isn't murder." "I'm not threatening you." "You're on my land, refusing to leave, making claims on my wife. That's threat enough." They stood there, three people locked in a standoff that could only end badly. The morning was absolutely still. No wind, no birdsong. Like the world itself was holding its breath. "Last chance," Elijah said. "Ride out now or I'll make you." Thomas's smile widened. "You know what I think? I think you're bluffing. I think you're a broken-down widower who got lucky when my wife fell into your lap. I think you don't have the stones to actually pull that trigger. You willing to bet your life on that?" For a moment, Thomas actually seemed to consider it. His hand hovered over his pistol, measuring angles, calculating odds. Then he laughed and stepped back. "Not today. But this isn't over, Vance. Not by a long shot. I'll be back with the sheriff. Get this sorted out legal-like. We'll see what he has to say about wife stealing. You do that." Elijah kept the rifle trained on him. "And I'll show him the bruises you left on her. We'll see who he believes." Thomas mounted his horse, but his eyes never left Mara. "You're making a mistake. You know that, right? This life you're playing at, it won't last. Sooner or later you'll remember who you belong to." "I belong to myself," Mara said. "I always have." Thomas rode off, but his words lingered like poison in the air. Elijah didn't lower the rifle until he was out of sight. Even then, he kept it ready. "He meant it," Mara said. "About the sheriff." "I know. What do we do?" Elijah finally looked at her. "We get ready. Whatever's coming, we face it together." She nodded, but inside fear gnawed at her. Thomas wouldn't give up. And now that he'd involved the law, things were about to get a lot more complicated. They'd bought themselves time. But time was all it was. The real fight was still coming. The sheriff arrived 3 days later with Thomas riding beside him like a man who'd already won. Elijah saw them coming from a quarter-mile out, two riders moving slow and deliberate through the morning haze. He'd been expecting this, had prepared for it as best he could, but seeing it actually happen still sent ice through his veins. "Mara," he called toward the cabin. "They're here." She came out wearing her best dress, the one she'd been married in. Her hair was pulled back neat, her face composed. Only Elijah could see the tremor in her hands as she stood beside him. Sheriff William Garrett was a big man gone soft around the middle, with a gray beard and tired eyes that had seen too much frontier justice to be impressed by much anymore. He dismounted with a grunt, adjusted his gun belt, and looked between Elijah and Thomas like a man who already regretted making the trip. "Mr. Vance?" Garrett said. "That's me. I'm Sheriff Garrett out of Copper Ridge. This gentleman here says you're harboring his wife." He pulled out a piece of paper. "Got a marriage certificate from Illinois dated 1869. Says he's legally married to one Mara Rourke." "She's Mara Vance now," Elijah said. "Has been since February." "That's the problem, see? You can't marry a woman who's already married." Garrett looked genuinely apologetic. "I know that's not what you want to hear, but the law's the law. The law says a man can beat his wife half to death, and she's supposed to just take it? Mara's voice cut sharp across the yard. Because that's what he did, Sheriff. 5 years of it. You want to see the scars? Thomas made a disgusted sound. She's lying. Always was dramatic. I never laid a hand on her that wasn't deserved. Deserved? Mara's laugh was bitter. Tell him about the time you broke my ribs, Thomas, or the time you split my eyebrow open because I burned the bread. Was that deserved? Garrett held up a hand. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but domestic matters between a husband and wife. I'm not his wife. She stepped forward. I left him. I traveled halfway across the country to get away from him. I married Elijah legally, with a preacher and papers and everything proper. That makes me Elijah's wife, not his. Except you were already married when you did that, Garrett said gently, which makes your second marriage invalid. I'm sorry, but that's how it works. So what are you saying? Elijah asked, though he already knew. You're taking her back to him? I'm saying the law recognizes Mr. Rourke's claim. If Mrs. Rourke wants to contest that, she can file for divorce through proper channels. But until then, she belongs to him like a piece of property. Elijah's hand drifted toward his rifle. That about right? Garrett's expression hardened. Don't do anything stupid, son. I understand you got feelings involved here, but this is a legal matter. Getting yourself shot or arrested won't help anybody. He's not taking her. Mr. Vance, I don't care what your papers say. I don't care about Illinois law or marriage certificates or any of it. Elijah moved to stand directly in front of Mara. She's my wife. She stays here. That's the end of it. Thomas had been quiet through all this, watching with that cold smile. Now he spoke up. See what I'm dealing with, Sheriff? Man won't listen to reason. Because reason says I should hand her over to the man who beat her? No, find a different solution. Garrett rubbed his face, looking older suddenly. There isn't one. Not legal anyway. Best I can offer is to give you folks some time to sort this out peaceful-like. Say till tomorrow morning. Maybe you can come to an arrangement. An arrangement, Mara repeated. Like what? I go back with him willingly and he promises not to kill me this time? I never tried to kill you, Thomas said. Don't be so dramatic. You held a knife to my throat and told me you'd gut me like a pig if I ever left. I've still got the scar where you pressed it in. Thomas shrugged. You were being hysterical. I was calming you down. The casual way he said it, like terrorizing his wife was just normal behavior, made Elijah see red. He took a step toward Thomas, but Mara grabbed his arm. Don't, she said quietly. That's what he wants. An excuse. She was right, but it took everything in him to stop. Garrett cleared his throat. Like I said, you got till tomorrow morning. Work it out however you can. But come dawn, if there's no resolution, I'm taking Mrs. Rourke back with me to sort this out proper in town. He looked at Thomas. You'll come with me now. Give them space to talk. I'm not leaving her alone with him, Thomas protested. You are if you want my help with this. Otherwise, I head back to town and you two work it out yourselves. Your choice. Thomas's jaw worked, but he nodded. Fine. But I'm holding you to that deadline, Sheriff. Tomorrow morning. They rode off together, Thomas looking back over his shoulder until they disappeared from sight. Elijah and Mara stood in the yard for a long moment, neither speaking. We could run, Mara said finally. Right now. Take the horses and go. How far would we get? They'd track us, and then it'd be worse. So what then? I just go with him tomorrow? Her voice cracked. After everything? After finding each other? We just give up? No. Elijah turned to face her. We don't give up, but we need to be smart about this. Smart how? The law's on his side, Elijah. You heard the sheriff. The law's on his side in Illinois. We're in Montana territory. Different jurisdiction, different rules. He was thinking out loud now, working through possibilities. What if we got you a divorce, right here, right now? On what grounds? And who'd grant it? Judge Holloway in Silver Creek. He's known for being flexible on matters of domestic violence. I've heard stories. Silver Creek's 40 miles from here. We'd never make it there and back by morning. Then we don't come back. We go to Silver Creek, file for divorce, wait for it to process. By the time Thomas figures out where we went, it'll be done. Mara shook her head. Divorces take months, sometimes years, and we'd have to prove grounds. It's not as simple as just asking. There's got to be something we can do. There is. She met his eyes. You let me go with him? Absolutely not. Just listen. I go back, file for divorce properly through the Illinois courts. It'll take time, but it'll be legal. And once it's final, I come back here, to you. You really think he'd let you do that? The minute you're back in his house, you're trapped. He'll never let you leave again. Then what do you suggest? Because I'm out of ideas. Elijah paced the yard, mind racing. There had to be an answer, some legal loophole or territorial quirk that would let them win this. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized Garrett was right. The law was clear. Mara's marriage to Thomas came first. Everything that came after was technically invalid, unless Thomas wasn't around to contest it. The thought came unbidden, dark and tempting. If Thomas had an accident on his way back to Illinois, if he just disappeared, then there'd be no one to dispute Mara's marriage to Elijah. No one with legal standing anyway. But that path led to murder, and Elijah wasn't sure he was willing to go there. Not yet, anyway. There's another option, Mara said quietly, like she'd been reading his thoughts. But you're not going to like it. What? I tell Thomas I'll go with him. Then on the road I kill him. Elijah stared at her. You can't be serious. Why not? It's self-defense, practically. You know what he'll do to me once he gets me alone. I'd just be defending myself preemptively. That's murder, Mara. They'd hang you. Only if they caught me. And I can be pretty resourceful when I need to be. She smiled grimly. Besides, what's the alternative? Live the rest of my life looking over my shoulder? Waiting for him to show up again? We'll figure something out. There's nothing to figure out. Her voice went flat. You heard the sheriff? The law says I'm Thomas's wife. I can fight it, but it'll take years, and in the meantime, he's got every right to drag me back to Illinois. That's reality. Then we change reality. How? He didn't have an answer, but the thought of her leaving, of Thomas taking her away, made him feel like that day with the gun all over again, like the world was closing in and there was no air left to breathe. They spent the rest of the day in the cabin, talking in circles, trying to find a solution that didn't involve violence or surrender. By nightfall, they were no closer to an answer. Maybe we should just tell the truth, Mara said as they sat by the fire. Go to town, make it public what he did. Get people on our side. You think folks care about a woman getting knocked around by her husband? Most would say it's none of their business. Some might care. Not enough to matter. Elijah stared into the flames. The sheriff was sympathetic, I could tell, but he's still bound by law, and the law says you're Thomas's property. I hate that word, property. I know. They went to bed, but neither slept. Just lay there in the darkness, holding on to each other like they could somehow prevent what was coming. I'm not going back to him, Mara whispered. I'd rather die. Don't say that. I mean it. If tomorrow comes and there's no other way, I want you to shoot me. Quick and clean. Better than what he'd do. Mara, promise me, if it comes to that, you won't let him take me alive. Elijah pulled her closer. It won't come to that. But if it does, I promise. The words tasted like ash. But it won't. We'll find another way. He just wished he believed it. Morning came too fast and too bright. They rose in silence, dressed, made coffee. Neither of them drank, waiting for the sound of horses. When Garrett and Thomas finally appeared, it was just past dawn. They rode up to the cabin and stopped at the same spot as before. Made your decision? Garrett called out. Elijah and Mara stepped outside together. Mara was wearing her traveling clothes, a bag packed and sitting by the door. For a moment, Elijah thought she'd actually decided to go with Thomas. Then she picked up the bag and threw it at Thomas's feet. Those are your things, she said. Every letter you ever wrote me, every gift you ever gave me, every reminder that I was stupid enough to marry you. Take them and go. Thomas's face darkened. That's not how this works. It's exactly how this works. I'm not going with you. I'm not your wife. I don't care what the law says or what papers you've got. You have no claim on me. Sheriff, Thomas started, but Garrett held up a hand. Hold on. He looked at Mara. Ma'am, I need to be clear. If you refuse to go with him, I can compel you. I don't want to, but I will. Then you'll have to drag me. Mara's voice was steel. Because I'm not walking away from this life, not for him, not for anyone. Mr. Vance, Garrett said, turning to Elijah. Surely you can see this is the only legal way forward. Help me out here. Elijah looked at the sheriff, then at Thomas, then at Mara. 3 months ago, he'd been ready to die. had the gun to his head and everything. Now he was standing here, ready to fight for something worth living for. "No," he said simply. "No? No, I won't help you. She's my wife. She stays here. And if you try to take her, you're going to have to go through me." Garrett sighed. "Son, don't make me arrest you." "Then don't try to take her." Thomas had heard enough. He dismounted, started walking toward the cabin. "I'm done playing games. Mara, get on the horse, now." "Stay back," Elijah warned, raising his rifle. "You won't shoot. You're not that stupid." But Thomas read him wrong. Elijah wasn't the broken man who'd wanted to die. He was the man who'd found something worth living for, worth fighting for. And he'd be damned if he'd let this bastard take it away. He fired. The bullet hit the ground 2 inches from Thomas's boot. Thomas jumped back, eyes going wide. "Next one goes through your knee," Elijah said calmly. "One after that through your head. Your choice." "You saw that, Sheriff," Thomas shouted. "He tried to kill me." "I saw him fire a warning shot," Garrett said, "which is more restraint than you probably deserve." The sheriff looked tired. "Mr. Rourke, I'm starting to think maybe you ought to head back to Illinois. Cut your losses. She's my wife. She doesn't want to be. And I'm not in the business of forcing women to go where they don't want to go. Legal or not, it doesn't sit right." "You said you'd help me." "I said I'd look into the legal situation. I did. And yeah, technically, you've got a claim. But practically, I think you should let this go." Thomas's face went purple with rage. "You're all in on it together. Frontier justice, protecting your own. Well, I'm not leaving without her. And if you won't help me, I'll handle it myself." His hand went to his gun. Everything happened fast after that. Thomas drew. Elijah was already moving, bringing the rifle up, but Mara was faster. She'd grabbed Elijah's pistol from his belt and fired before either man could get a shot off. The bullet caught Thomas in the shoulder, spun him around. He went down hard, gun falling from his hand. "Jesus Christ," Garrett breathed. Mara stood there, pistol smoking in her hand, face pale but composed. "He drew first. You saw it." "I saw." Garrett dismounted, went to check on Thomas. "He's alive. Bleeding pretty good, though." Thomas was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. He stared up at Mara with something between shock and fury. "You shot me," he gasped. "I did." She lowered the pistol. "And I'll do it again if you come near me. That's a promise." Garrett helped Thomas to his feet, looked at Mara. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come to town. There'll be questions about this." "She was defending herself," Elijah said. "And me. He drew first." "I know that, but there's still procedures. Both of you, come to town. We'll sort it out proper." They rode to Copper Ridge together, a strange procession. Thomas barely conscious from blood loss, Garrett grim and silent, Elijah and Mara riding close together, hands occasionally touching. When they reached town, Doc Morrison patched Thomas up while Garrett took statements. The story was clear enough. Thomas had drawn his weapon, Mara had defended herself and her husband. Self-defense, plain and simple, but the legal question of the marriage remained. "Here's what I think," Garrett said, sitting across from them in his office while Thomas was still with the doctor. "I think you folks should head to Silver Creek, talk to Judge Holloway. He's got authority to hear cases involving domestic situations. Maybe he can grant an annulment or quick divorce based on abandonment and abuse. Get it done territorial, separate from Illinois." "That would work?" Mara asked. "Might. Holloway's sympathetic to women in bad situations. And if he grants it, then your marriage to Mr. Vance would be valid going forward." "What about Thomas?" "What about him? He drew on you. He's lucky I don't charge him with attempted murder. My suggestion, he takes the hint and goes back to Illinois." Garrett leaned back. "And if he's smart, he won't come back." They left Copper Ridge that afternoon, riding hard for Silver Creek. The 40 miles felt endless, but they pushed through, reaching the town by nightfall. Judge Holloway was a thin man with kind eyes who listened to their story without interrupting. When Mara showed him the scar on her face, the fading bruises on her arms, his expression hardened. "Mrs. Rourke," he said when she finished, "or Mrs. Vance, whichever you prefer. I've seen too many cases like yours. Women trapped by legal technicalities in marriages that should have ended the first time a man raised his hand." "So you'll help us?" Mara asked. "I'll do better than that." I'm going to grant you an immediate annulment on the grounds of fraud and duress. Your marriage to Thomas Rourke was entered under false pretenses. He represented himself as a good man, which he clearly is not, and you were coerced to remain through violence and threats. He pulled out paperwork. This is within my authority as a territorial judge. The annulment is effective immediately. What does that mean? Elijah asked. It means legally, as far as Montana Territory is concerned, Mara was never married to Thomas Rourke, which means her marriage to you is entirely valid. Holloway signed the papers with a flourish. There. Done. Mara stared at the document. Just like that? Just like that. Illinois might contest it, but they'd have to do it through territorial courts, and I doubt they'll bother. Mr. Rourke got what he deserved, a bullet in the shoulder and a trip home empty-handed. Most men would count themselves lucky and move on. They stayed in Silver Creek that night, in a small boarding house that rented rooms by the week. For the first time in days, they felt safe enough to breathe. It's really over? Mara asked as they got ready for bed. It's really over. She sat down heavily, like the weight she'd been carrying finally got too much. I shot him. You did. I don't feel bad about it. Should I feel bad about it? Elijah sat beside her. He was going to shoot me. Probably you too after. You did what you had to do. I know, but still. She looked at her hands. When I pulled that trigger, I wasn't scared. I was just angry. So angry that he thought he could still control me. That he came all this way expecting me to just fold. You didn't fold. No, I shot him instead. She laughed, a little wild. What does that make me? Someone who fought back. Someone who refused to be a victim. He took her hand. Someone brave. I don't feel brave. I feel like I just did something terrible and got lucky that it worked out. Maybe that's what brave is. Doing the terrible thing that needs doing and living with it after. They sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. The confrontation, the shooting, the legal resolution that felt almost too easy after everything else. What happens now? Mara asked. Now we go home. We live our lives. We try to be happy. Just like that? Just like that. She leaned against him. I love you. I don't think I've said that enough. You've said it plenty. Still, I want you to know what you did, standing up for me like that, risking everything. You'd have done the same. Yeah, I would have. She pulled back to look at him. We're a hell of a pair, aren't we? That we are. They made love that night for the first time since being married, slow and careful, learning each other's bodies the way they'd learned each other's hearts. It wasn't perfect. Nothing in their life together was perfect. But it was real and honest and theirs. After, as they lay tangled together, Mara said, Do you think he'll come back, Thomas? No, he's a bully, and bullies back down when you hit them hard enough. You hit him pretty hard. I did, didn't I? She smiled in the darkness. Felt good. Probably shouldn't admit that. Why not? It's true. They fell asleep like that, wrapped up in each other, safe in the knowledge that they'd fought for each other and won. The ride back to the cabin took 2 days. They went slow, enjoying the journey, stopping to camp under the stars. For the first time since they'd met, there was no urgency, no threat hanging over them, just two people traveling home together. When they finally saw the cabin, Mara felt something settle in her chest. This was hers. Really, truly hers. Not because a man owned her, but because she'd chosen it, chosen him, chosen this life. Welcome home, Mrs. Vance, Elijah said as they dismounted. Mrs. Vance. She tried the name on, found she liked the fit. Yeah, I could get used to that. They unloaded the horses, unpacked their things, settled back into the rhythms they'd built. But something was different now, easier, like they'd been carrying weight they hadn't even noticed until it was gone. That night, sitting by the fire, Elijah asked, Any regrets? About what? All of it. Coming here, marrying me. The whole mess with Thomas. Mara thought about it, about the fear and the violence and the uncertainty, about standing in front of a stranger with a rifle and deciding to stay, about learning to trust again, to hope again, to fight for something worth keeping. No, she said finally. No regrets. You? None. Not even the part where your wife shot her ex-husband? Especially not that part. He pulled her close. That was probably my favorite part, if I'm being honest. She laughed, real and full, the sound filling the cabin. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of coming rain. But inside, they were warm and safe, and home, together. The weeks that followed felt almost unnaturally quiet, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next catastrophe. But none came. Thomas didn't return. No angry letters arrived from Illinois. The sheriff didn't show up with new legal complications. Life just continued. It took Mara longer than she wanted to admit to believe it was really over. She'd wake in the night sometimes, heart pounding, certain she'd heard hoofbeats outside. Elijah would pull her close, whisper that it was just the wind or a deer passing through, and eventually she'd settle back into sleep. But the fear lingered, a low-grade anxiety that colored everything. "You think I'm being paranoid," she said one morning as they worked in the garden together. "I think you're being cautious. There's a difference." "Is there?" She sat back on her heels, wiped dirt from her hands. "It's been almost a month, Elijah. If Thomas was coming back, he'd have done it by now." "Probably. But you're not sure either." He looked at her across the rows of sprouting vegetables. "I'm sure of this. Whatever happens, we handle it together. That's all we can control." It was a good answer, a true answer. But Mara wanted more than truth. She wanted certainty, the kind that didn't exist in a world where men like Thomas walked free and women like her had to shoot their way to safety. Still, as the days passed and nothing happened, the tension began to ease. She started sleeping through the night, started working without constantly checking the tree line, started believing, slowly and carefully, that maybe she really had won her freedom. Summer came on strong and sudden, turning the world green and alive. The garden flourished under Mara's care, producing more vegetables than two people could eat. Elijah's trap lines brought in steady income from furs, enough to think about improvements to the cabin, maybe even buying more land. They fell into new rhythms, different from the careful dance of those first months. Easier, more intimate. They'd touch without thinking about it, kiss hello and goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world. They argued sometimes, about money, about repairs that could wait or couldn't, about whose turn it was to deal with the chickens Mara had insisted on buying. "They're your chickens," Elijah said one morning, glaring at the birds pecking around the yard. "They're our chickens. I bought them with our money for our eggs." "You bought them because you wanted them. Therefore, you're chickens." "That's not how marriage works." "Pretty sure it is." She threw a dish rag at him. He caught it, grinning, and the argument dissolved into laughter. These were the moments Mara treasured most. Not the grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the ordinary dailiness of living with someone who knew all her sharp edges and chose to stay anyway. Who argued with her about chickens and made terrible coffee and sometimes snored so loud she had to kick him awake. One afternoon in late June, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Elijah said, "I've been thinking. Dangerous habit. About the future. About what we want this place to be." Mara set down her mending. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been surviving, getting by. But I think we could do more than that. Build something real, something lasting." He gestured at the land around them. "We could expand the garden, get more livestock. Maybe build a second cabin, rent it out to travelers. Create something bigger than just the two of us scraping by." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Why not?" "Because we've spent so much energy just getting to okay. Maybe okay is enough. Maybe we don't need to push for more." "You really believe that?" Mara considered. Did she? A year ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Survival had been enough because survival was all she'd dared hope for. But now, sitting here with a man who loved her and a life that was actually hers, maybe survival wasn't the ceiling anymore. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me is scared to want more. Like if I reach for it, it'll all disappear." "And the other part?" "The other part wants to build something so solid that nothing can take it away. Not Thomas, not the law, not winter or drought or bad luck." She looked at him. "Something that's ours because we made it, not because we got lucky." "So let's do it." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He took her hand. "We've survived the worst. Time to figure out how to do better than survive." They started small, expanded the garden first, clearing more land and planting crops they could sell in town, bought 3 more chickens and a rooster, started getting enough eggs to trade. Elijah built a smokehouse for preserving meat, and Mara learned how to cure hams the way her mother had taught her sisters. The work was hard, harder than just maintaining what they had, but it felt different, purposeful, like they were building towards something instead of just holding the line against entropy. They made mistakes, of course. The first batch of smoked venison came out so salty it was inedible. Half the tomato plants got blight and had to be pulled. The rooster turned mean and had to be butchered early. Well, that was a waste of money, Mara said, watching Elijah pluck the bird. We'll eat good tonight, though. That's one meal. We needed him for breeding. So we'll get another rooster, one that's less of a bastard. She laughed despite her frustration. You think roosters come in not a bastard variety? Worth a try. These small failures didn't break them the way they might have before. They'd learned that setbacks were just part of the process, that you adapted and kept going. It was a lesson hard won through months of fighting for every small victory. In August, they rode to town and Mara sold her first batch of preserves to the general store. 3 jars of pickled vegetables, 2 of berry jam. The store owner, Mrs. Chen, examined them critically before nodding. I'll take them on consignment. If they sell, bring me more. It wasn't much, but it was Mara's work, her skill, being valued by someone other than Elijah. She felt a swell of pride walking out of that store that had nothing to do with being a wife and everything to do with being herself. You're smiling, Elijah observed as they loaded supplies onto the wagon. I am. Proud of you. For selling 3 jars of pickles? For building something that's yours. He kissed her forehead. For being more than what anyone tried to make you. That night lying in bed, Mara said, I never thanked you properly. For what? For not giving up on me. On us. When Thomas showed up, you could have told me to go, saved yourself the trouble. That never crossed my mind. It should have. Most men would have. I'm not most men. He turned to face her in the darkness. And you're not most women. We're both too stubborn and too broken to do things the easy way. Broken. She tested the word. You still think of yourself that way, don't you? Sometimes, but less than I used to. She traced the line of his jaw. I think maybe we're not broken anymore. Just scarred. There's a difference. Yeah? Yeah. Broken means you don't work right. Scarred just means you've survived things, and we have survived a lot. He pulled her closer. I like that. Scarred, but working. Working pretty well, actually. Don't get cocky. Too late. They made love slowly, taking their time, no longer shy or careful with each other. After, as Elijah drifted off to sleep, Mara lay awake thinking about scars and survival and the strange alchemy that had turned 2 desperate people into something that felt almost like whole. September brought the first serious test of their expanded operation. A traveling merchant came through offering to buy all the vegetables they could spare. He had contracts with mining camps further north and would pay cash, good money. How much can you deliver? He asked. Mara looked at their garden, did quick math. Maybe 50 pounds of potatoes, 20 of carrots, another 30 of mixed greens. I'll take it all. Can you have it ready by Friday? That gave them 3 days. They worked from dawn till dark, harvesting and washing and packing. Their hands blistered, their backs ached. But when Friday came and the merchant paid them in actual money, more than they'd seen in months, it felt worth every hour. We did it, Mara said, counting the bills for the 3rd time. We did. This is real money, Elijah. Enough to buy that land extension you wanted. Enough to make real improvements. Or we could save it for emergencies. Since when are you the cautious one? Since I realized we've got something worth protecting. He took the money, tucked it into the box they kept under the bed. Let's be smart about this. Build slow. Make sure each step is solid before we take the next one. She knew he was right, but part of her wanted to spend it all immediately, buy everything they needed to expand faster. The part of her that had spent too many years with nothing was hungry to have more, to build a cushion so thick that no disaster could penetrate it. We'll save half, she compromised. Spend half on improvements. That way we're moving forward, but not reckless. Deal. They shook on it like business partners, which made them both laugh. The money bought them lumber for repairs, seeds for next year's crops, and a milk cow Mara named Bessie, who was stubborn and mean, but produced enough milk to make butter and cheese to sell. Your animals have terrible personalities, Elijah observed, watching Bessie try to kick him while he milked her. They're survivors, like us. Can't expect them to be sweet about it. Fair point. As fall progressed and the days grew shorter, they started preparing for winter with an intensity born of experience. They'd survived one winter together, knew what it took. But this year felt different. They weren't just trying to endure. They were setting themselves up to thrive. The root cellar got stocked with more vegetables than they'd need. The smokehouse filled with preserved meat. They bought extra lamp oil, more firewood than seemed necessary, enough supplies to last through a siege. You think we're overdoing it? Mara asked, looking at their stockpile. Rather have too much than too little. Spoken like a man who's been through hard times. Haven't we both? She had to agree with that. Winter came early that year, snow falling in October and not letting up. But this time, trapped in the cabin with supplies enough and work enough and each other, it felt less like imprisonment and more like peace. They spent the long evenings talking about everything and nothing. Mara taught Elijah card games her sisters had taught her. He read to her from the books they'd bought, adventure stories that made them laugh at the romanticized version of frontier life. No one ever talks about the frozen chamber pots, Mara said, during one particularly dramatic passage about wilderness survival, or the way your hands crack and bleed from the cold, or how you smell after 3 weeks without a proper bath. Still romantic, though, if you say so. On Christmas, they exchanged gifts for the first time. Mara had sewn Elijah a new shirt, carefully embroidered with his initials. He'd carved her a set of wooden spoons, each one smooth and perfectly balanced. "You made these?" she asked, running her fingers over the polished wood. "During the afternoons when you were napping. Wanted to surprise you." "I love them. They're just spoons. They're beautiful spoons. Made by you. For me." She kissed him. "That makes them perfect." They cooked a special dinner, roasted chicken with vegetables and fresh bread. It wasn't fancy, but it felt festive, important, a marker of how far they'd come. "This time last year, I didn't think I'd make it to another Christmas," Elijah said over dinner. "Neither did I, honestly. I was in Kansas City, working at that hotel, wondering if every man who walked through the door was Thomas coming to drag me back. And now? Now I'm here, with you, building something that's ours." She raised her glass of water. They had no wine, but it didn't matter. "To survival." "To more than survival," Elijah corrected. "To actually living." They clinked glasses and drank, and in that moment Mara felt something she'd never quite felt before. Not just happiness, that was too simple, but contentment, maybe. The sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. It was a feeling she'd spent her whole life chasing without knowing what it was. January brought a blizzard that lasted 5 days, trapping them completely. But they had food, fuel, each other. They weathered it playing cards and telling stories and making love when the mood struck, which was often enough that Mara started to wonder if they might end up with more than just the two of them come next year. The thought should have scared her. She'd lost one baby already, carried the weight of that failure through her marriage to Thomas, like a stone around her neck. But with Elijah, the possibility felt different, less like a burden and more like potential. She didn't mention it, not yet. It was too fragile, too new. But she held the thought close, let herself imagine a future with a child in it, and didn't immediately push it away. When the storm finally broke and they dug themselves out, the world was transformed. Snow piled 8 feet high in places, the landscape alien and beautiful. "We're going to be stuck here for weeks," Elijah said, surveying the damage. "Is that a problem?" "Not particularly." He looked at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes. No, being stuck here with her was not a problem, not even close. They made it to town in late February once the roads were passable. Mrs. Chen's store had sold out of Mara's preserves and wanted more. The merchant who'd bought their vegetables came through again, looking for whatever they could spare from their winter stores. "You folks are making quite the reputation," he said. "Quality goods, reliable delivery. That's rare out here." "We try," Mara said, feeling that pride again, that sense of building something real. They bought seeds for spring planting, talked to other homesteaders about forming a cooperative for selling goods in bulk. The community was small but growing, and for the first time Mara felt like she was part of it. Not just surviving on the edges, but contributing, mattering. On the ride home, Elijah said, "You're quiet." "Just thinking." About? About how different everything is. A year ago, I was hiding, running from Thomas, running from my past, just trying to disappear. She looked at the landscape rolling past. Now I'm visible, on purpose, building a business, making connections. It feels risky. Is it too much? No, it feels right, just different from what I'm used to. You don't have to hide anymore, Mara. You're not that scared woman running from Illinois. You're Mara Vance. You shot your abusive ex-husband and built a business selling pickles. You're kind of a badass. She laughed. Is that the technical term? It is now. March brought the thaw and with it a letter. It arrived via a circuit rider who was delivering mail to the outlying homesteads. The envelope was addressed to Mara Rourke, care of General Delivery, Copper Ridge. Her hand shook as she opened it. The letter was from her sister Margaret in St. Louis. Somehow, through some network of gossip and inquiry, she'd heard that Mara was alive, was in Montana, had remarried. Dearest Mara, it read, I cannot tell you the relief I felt learning you are safe. When you disappeared, we feared the worst. Thomas told everyone you'd run off with another man, abandoned your vows. Most believed him, but I never did. I know what he was, what he did to you. I'm only sorry I wasn't brave enough to help you escape sooner. Please write back if you can. I want to know you're truly all right. Your loving sister, Margaret. Mara read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. What is it? Elijah asked, concerned. My sister. She wants to know if I'm okay. She believes me about Thomas. That's good, isn't it? It's everything. She pressed the letter to her chest. I thought my whole family had written me off, but Margaret, she knew. She believed me. You going to write back? Yes. Absolutely yes. She spent the evening composing a response, telling Margaret about her life in Montana, about Elijah, about the business they were building. She didn't mention shooting Thomas. Some things were better left unsaid, but she made it clear she was safe. She was happy. She'd built a life worth living. Think she'll visit? Elijah asked as Mara sealed the envelope. Maybe, probably not. St. Louis to Montana is a hell of a trip. She set the letter aside to mail next time they went to town. But knowing she's out there, that she cares, that's enough. Having that connection to her past, to the family she'd thought she'd lost, shifted something in Mara. She'd spent so long thinking she had to erase everything that came before, start completely fresh. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe you could keep the parts that mattered, the people who loved you, the memories that didn't hurt, and just discard the rest. Spring exploded across the land like a promise kept. The garden sprouted overnight, green and lush. The livestock produced offspring, chickens hatching, Bessie delivering a calf that Mara inexplicably named Buttercup. You're terrible at naming things, Elijah said. Bessie and Buttercup, it's a theme. It's ridiculous. Your face is ridiculous. That's your comeback? I'm tired. The cow kept me up all night. He pulled her close. Go take a nap. I'll handle things out here. She wanted to argue, to insist she was fine, but the exhaustion was real. She'd been tired a lot lately, sleeping more than usual. Probably just the change in seasons, the increased workload. But deep down, she suspected it might be something else. She waited another month to be sure. When she finally told Elijah, they were in the garden, working side by side in the dirt. I think I'm pregnant, she said, not looking at him. His hand stilled. You think? I'm pretty sure. All the signs are there. Silence. She risked a glance at him. His face was unreadable. Say something, she prompted. I don't know what to say. Are you happy? Scared? Angry? All of it. He sat back. Mara, I lost a child before. Lost Emma and Sarah both. The thought of going through that again. I know. I lost one too, remember? I'm terrified. She took his hand. But I'm also hopeful. And I need to know if you are too. He looked at their joined hands, dirt under both their nails, calluses matching. Yeah. I'm hopeful. Scared, but hopeful. That's enough for now. They didn't tell anyone else, kept it between them like a secret too precious to share. Mara worked carefully, avoiding heavy lifting, making sure she ate enough and rested when she needed to. Elijah became almost comically protective. He wouldn't let her carry water, chop wood, do any of the dozen things she'd always done. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she finally snapped after he tried to stop her from gathering eggs. I know that. Then stop treating me like I'm going to break. I'm just trying to help. I don't need help. I need you to trust that I know my own body. She softened her tone. I appreciate the concern, really, but you can't protect me from everything, and trying to is just going to drive us both crazy. He backed off, though she could tell it cost him. The fear of loss ran deep in both of them, scars that went all the way through. But they were learning, slowly, that fear couldn't be the thing that drove their decisions, that you had to hope even when hope felt dangerous. Summer came, and with it, the baby growing obvious enough that they couldn't hide it anymore. Mrs. Chen noticed first, her eyes going to Mara's belly during a delivery run. Well, she said, congratulations. Thank you. You got a midwife lined up? Mara hadn't thought that far ahead. Not yet. There's a woman 2 homesteads over, Martha Hendricks. She's caught more babies than I can count. I'll send word you'll be needing her come winter. Winter. The word made it real in a way it hadn't been before. A baby. Their baby. Coming in the dead of winter when everything was hardest. Of course. But they prepared the way they prepared for everything, methodically, thoroughly, leaving nothing to chance. They set aside money for the midwife, bought cloth for diapers and small clothes. Elijah built a cradle, working on it in secret, then presenting it to Mara one evening. It's beautiful, she said, running her hands over the smooth wood. It's practical. It's both. She looked at him. You're going to be a good father. I was a father before. Wasn't enough to keep her safe. That wasn't your fault. Fever comes, people die. You can't control that. I know. But knowing doesn't make it easier. She understood that, had carried her own guilt about her lost baby for years, even though rationally she knew it wasn't her fault. Some scars ran too deep to ever fully heal. You just learned to live with them. Fall came crisp and clear. They harvested more vegetables than ever, sold everything they could spare, tucked away money against the lean months ahead. The baby kicked and moved, making its presence impossible to ignore. You ready for this? Elijah asked one night, his hand on her belly. No, you? Not even close. Well, that's honest at least. We'll figure it out. We always do. Winter arrived with its usual brutality, but this time they were prepared. The cabin was warm, supplies were ample, and Martha Hendricks came to stay 2 weeks before the baby was due, just to be safe. She was a stout woman with rough hands and a no-nonsense attitude that Mara appreciated immediately. You've done this before? Martha asked. Lost one early, years ago. Doesn't count. This is your first then. Might be hard, might be easy. Won't know till it happens. She looked around the cabin. Place is clean. You've got supplies. That's more than most. You'll be fine. Her certainty was grounding, made the whole thing feel less terrifying. The baby came on a December night during a snowstorm because, of course, it did. Nothing in Mara's life had ever been easy or convenient. Labor hit hard and fast, pain that took her breath away. Elijah looked panicked, but Martha took control, barking orders, getting everything ready. You've done hard things before, Martha said as another contraction hit. This is just one more. Mara wanted to argue that childbirth was significantly harder than anything she'd previously survived, but she didn't have breath for words, just gritted her teeth and endured. Hours blurred together, pain and pressure and Martha's voice telling her to push, harder, that's it, almost there. Elijah holding her hand so tight she thought bones might break, his face white with fear. And then, finally, a cry, thin and outraged and alive. It's a girl, Martha announced, wrapping the baby in clean cloth. A girl. Mara started crying and couldn't stop. Relief and joy and terror all mixed together until she couldn't tell which was which. Martha placed the baby in her arms. She was tiny, red-faced, perfect, and terrifying. Hello, Mara whispered. Hello, little one. Elijah leaned over them both, his face wet with tears. She's beautiful. She's ours. Yeah, his voice broke. She is. They named her Sarah Emma Vance for the daughter Elijah had lost and the mother Mara barely remembered. It felt right, honoring the past while building toward the future. Those first weeks were brutal. Sarah cried constantly, slept in unpredictable bursts, demanded attention at all hours. Mara was exhausted to the point of delirium, her body aching from birth, her mind foggy from lack of sleep. "I can't do this," she said one night, crying as hard as the baby. "I'm not cut out for this." "Yes, you are." Elijah took Sarah, rocked her gently. "You're just tired. We both are." "What if I mess her up? What if I'm a terrible mother?" "You won't be. You're strong and smart and you love her. That's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be. It's all any of us have." Slowly, impossibly, they found their rhythm. Sarah started sleeping longer stretches. Mara's body healed. They learned to work around the baby's needs, taking turns so each could sleep, developing signals and systems that made the chaos manageable. By spring, when the snow melted and the world opened up again, they'd survived another winter. But this time they'd done it as a family. Not just two broken people clinging to each other, but three whole people building something that mattered. Mara sat on the porch one April morning, Sarah sleeping against her chest, and watched Elijah work in the garden. The sun was warm, the air smelled like growing things, and for the first time in her life she felt completely at peace. "What are you thinking about?" Elijah asked, catching her watching him. "About how far we've come. How different everything is." "Good different?" "The best different." She adjusted Sarah's blanket. "A year and a half ago, I was running from one nightmare toward an unknown future. I had nothing, was nothing, and now I have everything." She smiled at him. "A home, a family, work that matters, a husband who sees me as an equal." She paused. "I never thought I'd get to have this." "Neither did I." He came to sit beside her. "I was ready to die, remember? Had the gun loaded and everything." "I remember." "And then you showed up, didn't flinch, didn't judge, just asked if I was Elijah Vance and made yourself at home. Seemed like the thing to do. You saved my life that day. You saved mine too. Maybe not as dramatically, but you did. You gave me a place to be safe, a chance to be more than what I'd been." They sat together in the sunshine, their daughter sleeping between them, and watched the world turn green with possibility. "Think we'll make it?" Mara asked. "Long term?" "I think we'll fight like hell to make it. Beyond that?" He shrugged. "Who knows? But fighting together is better than dying alone." "That's almost romantic." "I try." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Elijah Vance." "I love you too, Mara Vance." Sarah stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. Above them, birds called to each other. The creek ran full with snowmelt. Somewhere in the distance, Bessie lowed at Buttercup. It wasn't perfect. Their life would never be perfect. There would be more struggles, more winters, more times when survival felt like the best they could hope for. But they'd face it together, these three survivors who'd found each other at the edge of the world and built something worth keeping. The past didn't define them anymore. Thomas was a memory, fading like old scars. Sarah and Emma were honored but not mourned with the raw grief that had nearly destroyed Elijah. The trauma they'd both carried was still there, would always be there, but it didn't control them. They'd learned the hard way that you couldn't outrun your damage. You could only carry it forward and hope that somewhere along the line you built something strong enough to bear the weight. Looking at her family, husband, daughter, home, Mara knew they'd done exactly that. They'd survived. And then they'd done something harder. They'd learned to live, not despite their scars, but because of them. Because survival had taught them what mattered, stripped away everything that didn't, left them with the raw truth of themselves. And that truth was simple. They chose each other, every day, through fear and hope and all the messy, complicated reality in between. That was the real victory. Not the legal papers or the defeated ex-husband or the successful business, but the daily choice to keep building, keep trying, keep loving even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because in the end, that's what separated surviving from living. Surviving was what you did alone, hunkered down against the world. Living was what you did together, reaching for something beyond mere endurance. They'd both spent too long just surviving. Now, finally, they were learning to live. And that made all the difference.